Hello and welcome to EQ Above IQ, Parenting with Emotional Intelligence and Healing the Inner Child. My name is Trina Casey and I'm your host today. Thank you for listening to this second episode of Season 6. And as I stated on my previous episode, if you didn't listen to, I'm back. I took a little hiatus. And I'm back now and a little bit different format, still talking about the kid stuff because I'm a parent, but also talking about how that applies to the world and how the world applies to that. Wow, this last 3 years, right? Just when we thought it was just pandemics, now we have all this upheaval with wars, Ukraine, Israel, still doing Israel. One of the things that I am very cognizant of now is that it's all about money, everything. And there happens to be one organization that keeps coming up more and more in the financier investment realm, and it's BlackRock. If you don't know what BlackRock is, go look it up because it explains a lot, including the bombing in Israel and the war in Ukraine and lots more. I'm not going to get too much detail in it, but I really want people to start cross-pollinating their minds. And what I mean is that we have been trained by the hegemony and everything that's involved with that to only see things on a micro tip of a pen, to put ourselves in a little box of information and knowledge. And just FYI, BlackRock owns investment stock in almost every media outlet, if they're not the number one investor in every single media outlet, except for small rogue ones, which, like Al Jazeera that got bombed nearly to death. And so we have a lot of things going on as far as freedom of speech and also things like in Tennessee. What was that? I mean, I'm not shocked. It is the South. But when two young Black representatives get ousted just for protesting against gun violence, which they just had another mass shooting in Tennessee. And, rightfully so, these young congressmen, along with another woman, what's her name? Anyways, it was two Black men and one white woman. And guess who didn't get expelled from their seat? And she at least said it openly that it wasn't. It was because she was white and these two young men, both named Justins. I think Justin Pearson and Justin Jackson. Yeah, we need to, as a woman of color, as a Black woman, or as what I like to say, a melanated person, I know all of this to be true. I've lived it. I've experienced it all over the world. And it's so difficult to explain to my child sometimes why pale scale people treat melanated people in this way. And I've really come down to it being a sort of psychopathy, a sort of mental illness, and it's fed by fear, paranoia, and a deep, deep sense of self-loathing and jealousy. It's the only thing that can explain it. A once great continent is being reduced to rubble and just impoverished more and more and more and more as it forgets its history. I follow a few people on LinkedIn that are from Africa, and the theme is always the same. The leaders that want change in Africa, that want a united Africa, are always assassinated by bribery, usually from European or special interest groups, and BlackRock would be one of them. They have headquarters all over the world. And just recently, if you haven't heard about this, France and Paris, the protesters in the hundreds of thousands and more landed right on Blackstone, not Blackstone, because that's the name that it was before it changed to BlackRock or split off from Blackstone to BlackRock. They basically went to their doorstep and are protesting there because you see, this is much bigger, much bigger than what they're leading into about a minor thing as a 2-year increase of the retirement age. Of course, that stinks, especially to pensioners who are losing their money from poor investment and spending by their government. But it's always bigger than surface. So I always tell my son, dig, 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 and you will get to the truth. If you give up on the surface, you will never, ever, ever get to the truth of things. So, and that is with learning. When you learn your math, when you learn your sciences, everything is evolving, but there's always a root somewhere to knowledge. And for too long, it's been hidden from us for the sake of pale scale supremacy or white supremacy, let's say it, okay, what it is. But, I've been trying to find ways, as my son is biracial, for him to feel like he can embrace all of who he is. But there's something inherent in pale scale people that can't stop them from certain impulses, like his dad asking him if he considered himself Black or more mixed. I'm still kind of flabbergasted that was a piece of conversation that he would have on one of his rare visits to his son to talk about his racial identity. That's a direct assault against me. And it's so hurtful. It's so unnecessary. Of all the things that could be discussed on a visit with your child, discussing his race should be at the bottom of the list. My son presents as Black, and that's what he considers himself. And I think with what the world is showing him about what it means to be white, I think there's a natural desire for a disassociation. Let's get real. Let's get honest. But, the last thing I want my son to do is to hate part of who he is. And the truth is that I'm multiracial too, When it comes from my African, it goes like most melanated people in the diaspora is mixed with some type of Caucasian. So not by choice, but by circumstance and force. So yeah, I've been dealing with that quite a bit. One of the things I try to get my son to do is breathing exercises, box breathing, especially with ADHD. It's like a lot and it's quite tiring. But yeah, this episode, I wanted to talk about awareness. Well, I talk about awareness all the time as far as emotional intelligence. And I think one of the reasons why I talk about it is because you really can't practice any of the other principles without that deep awareness of self and who you are, what your triggers are, where you came from. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for melanated people outside of Africa, inside of Africa now. The focus has turned to a sort of glamorization of bougie. I watched an episode of some TV show about African wealth, and I was nauseated because it just reminded me of how melanated people in America fall for the whole buy it, Gucci, brand name fashion, hegemonic thinking about wealth, capitalism. And the truth is that, as Clarence Thomas, the infamous Supreme Court judge whose wife stormed Capitol Hill on January 6th, or was helping organize that, is hopefully on his way to impeachment, along with Trump on his way to arrest. It's dangerous when you don't understand who you are. And it's so dangerous when you don't love who you are. Clarence Thomas, for example, is the poster boy for a type of melanated man that I truly want to understand and empathize with, but find it so hard. He got off from assaulting Anita Hill, which I have no doubt he did. And he should have been ousted at that point. But they always wanted to keep a particular face on the Supreme Court. Now we have 2 Black justices, one a Black woman in America. And I haven't heard much from her since she got appointed. But the point is that he really represents the I hate Black or melanated, brown, Black women to the point of sabotaging the entirety of the community. He doesn't care when there was so much potential to uplift and help people who need it the most. This complacency, anyways, back to why people are calling for his impeachment. He's been taking basically not bribes, quote unquote bribes as he calls it, but luxury trips, and with mega donors, Republican mega donors, who they say are friends of theirs. But he's supposed to disclose any type of trips, gifts, jet rides, whatever the case is, as a U.S. government justice. That's a little bit of a conflict of interest. So it's so important for us to bring this to light, because part of the problem is the U.S. government goes after all kinds of people outside of the country about ethics, moral values. It has been the instigation of war after war. 4 out of 5 wars have been started by the United States. And it's all based in resources and greed. And unnecessary, in my opinion. And now we're seeing something called BRICS. Yeah, even my son knew about that one. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but honestly, it will probably play out to war. And I don't know if that's part of the whole plan in the first place. But the people who suffer from any of these actions are going to be you and I. The little people, the people just surviving every day and trying to thrive every day to make the most of our lives, who are adopting emotional intelligence and philosophies that can try to make this place a little bit better, this world a little bit better. And, now they're coming clean about aliens and space. And it's just so much corruption, so many lies, that are so unnecessary. And me and my son right now, we're going through this whole who's telling the truth. And I'm explaining to him what the word gaslighting means, and how, if you didn't hear me, just say you didn't hear me. But don't say I said something I know I didn't say. And it's trying to be sneaky to get his way. And I'm like, trying to make me question. I said, listen, one of the things that I always been very good at is my memory. And I'm immaculate with my words as much as possible. So I think before I speak. And I said, right now, you're at an age of impulsivity. So you just let things blurt out. You are really deeply emotion based. Sometimes it's really hard for you to control your impulses. That's not me anymore. I don't think I ever was. So just always quiet and thoughtful since I was a child. So it's so frustrating. I will admit sometimes the old brain is kicking in, or the fogginess that everybody seemed to get during COVID comes up from time to time. And I'm like, why do you go in the kitchen? But for the most part, always clear about what I said and how I said it most of the time. So gaslighting, if you don't know what that word is basically challenging somebody else's perception of their reality to the point where you're manipulating them into thinking that they're the crazy one. When you argue your point, or you say things like, oh, you're just so sensitive, when you say something rude or abusive, or trying to convince them of a different reality. No, this is what I really meant, and after the damage is done. So I think it's really important because it's a common thing that's happening in our society, really global society, but the United States gets the stamp of doing it the most, especially as these certain talking heads from political parties are trying to rewrite history, which they've been doing for a long time, and they're freaking out because that's all coming to light. And then also forgetting that, the internet never forgets. Like this Marjorie Taylor Greene was on 60 Minutes. I was just sitting there like, wow. I watched like just a few minutes of it, but the little bit I watched I said to my son, look, this is gaslighting. And this is the absolute poster child for narcissism. They fact checked everything before they went into the interview with her, and she still denies that she says what she says. And they have proof, photo screenshots, everything. But she is in complete denial and just deflects or tries to change the subject to something that's totally not related. It's a type of fallacy, straw man fallacy, I think it's called. One of the many, 8 of them. I could be wrong. But yeah, this is all my episodes are going to be between 20 and 30 minutes now. I think that is an adequate time to talk about what I wanted to discuss and kind of share with you. So what I'm encouraging, especially during these times, is having these discussions about these tactics with your kids. Media, TikTok, even though I'm all pro, I keep leaving TikTok alone because TikTok has been amazing at getting historical facts that you are not going to learn in school. TikTok has been amazing for Black movements, in a native TikTok, all of these really important Indigenous and women's rights movement. TikTok has been amazing for. We have saved people's lives from TikToks, but the dancing and blah blah blah. It just makes it fun, I guess. But I find it goofy, and some of the things that my son is being exposed to, I'm serious, just like. The algorithm is negative. And I told him that the other day. I said, you have to be very careful what you ingest. You have to watch different things. So to me, I think it's 100%, 1,000% possible for every child to be a polymath. But you have to set the stage for it. And I wish I would have started much younger. But being in a stressful, unhappy marriage kind of made things hard for me. But, being a kid that started reading at 3, it's been a challenge for me to not see my son like learning. I accept It is what it is, but I'm still always encouraging different educational outlets. Check out this documentary or check out this. Oh, you want to watch this with me? But lately it's about the gaming and the video games with his friends, and I get it, but I absolutely hate it at the same time because it's a programming. And so all I can keep saying with as much love as possible in my heart is that that's not real. This is real. That's not real. This is real. And not to kill the imagination, because if it's his own imagination, I'm curious. But if it's an imagination of others, not so much. And it depends on the context of it too. Anyways, I encourage you to engage your children in different types of, subjects, not just school subjects, just different types of subjects so that they can have a broader perspective and more critical thinking about how the dots connect. Because right now we're seeing the dots connecting in such a profound way. And again, I call that the grand awakening. And I encourage that you show your children and talk to your inner child about the things that he or she missed. And now you go, oh, aha. Don't put yourself in a box. Don't put your children in a box. And don't put your mind in a box. Anyways, that's the end of the episode. Look up these words: polymath, hegemony, psychopathy. You can always go back and listen to some of the other episodes where I talk about more of the details around emotional intelligence and its 5 principles. Like I said, this season I'm taking a bit of a different direction because that's what is resonating with me, and that's what's downloading to me and to say to you. Reminder, I am a cognitive behavioral therapy life coach, emotional intelligence educator, and coach. I also write children's books that teach emotional intelligence, and you can look up all of the services that I offer, including mindful storytellers, where I teach children, and workshops for adults where you create a book, and that can be done online or in person. Just depends on how big is your budget. You can find all of that and more information about me on thisreallifebooks.com. I also have a retreat I am trying to organize for October of this year called Family Trauma Rehabilitation Retreat. There's a website for that as well. And me and my son have a monthly podcast that we do called Mother and Son Conversations, where we're talking about what it's like to have ADD and ADHD and have relationships with each other as we go through our hormonal changes, me with menopause and him with puberty, P&P. So just really want to keep the lines of communication and love open as long as possible, and also keep space for compassion and grace. And I encourage you to do the same. And I hope you have a blessed day.